If I had a nickel for every time I've played as a smoking hot android in a post-apocalyptic setting with gorgeous music juxtaposing the collapsing landscape around me in a world where humans have all but been replaced and Adam and Eve are featured as prominent characters in the story,
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Raven isn't the main villain of Stellar Blade, and there's definitely an argument you could make that she's not a villain at all, but merely an antagonist to Eve. But regardless of what role you think she fills, I found her to be the most compelling character in the game, so let's look at her story and find out why she broke the way she did. Real quick before we get into Raven's story, first we need a bit of context into Stellar Blade's world. Raven was sent to Earth from the colony by a being named Mothersphere. Many viewed Mothersphere as a god who would be the savior of humanity, but the reality was completely different. Mothersphere was an artificial intelligence created by a man named Raphael Marx for the advancement of mankind. But, as is often the case with fictional AIs that lack the proper checks and balances, the solution she comes up with comes at the detriment of those who already exist. She's not the focus of this video, so I'm not going to go into the full details on her, but I need to spend a bit of time on her first before we get to Raven. Mothersphere viewed humanity as too weak to be saved, and so her method of advancing humankind wasn't to improve them, but to replace them. She did this by creating the Androidos, androids that more or less looked like humans, but were effectively superior in every way. Their creation caused a war between them and humanity, in which humanity was severely outclassed and suffered an overwhelming defeat. The few humans who remained fled to a laboratory where they performed experiments to enhance themselves, to give them a fighting chance against the Androidos. These experiments transformed them into monstrosities that would later be known as Naytibas. As Naytibas, they were strong enough to fight back against the Androidos and managed to chase them back to the colony, a series of rings surrounding the Earth. The Naytibas continued to chase the Androidos inside the colony, and Mothersphere, who had no intentions of letting her creations be contaminated by humanity, destroyed one of the orbital rings, stopping the Naytiba advance and sending it crashing down to Earth, transforming it into the hellscape that we experience it as. To cover up her atrocities, Mothersphere rewrote the history books, leading the Androidos to believe that they were humans. With real humans having effectively been exiled, the Androidos had no reason to doubt Mothersphere's claims and accepted this rewritten history. Up in the colony, Mothersphere had trained a group of super soldiers known as the Eve Defense Force, or the Airborne Squadrons. These airborne squadrons were sent down to Earth from the colony to execute the Eve Protocol, take back the planet from the Naytibas and reclaim it for humanity. Raven was dispatched to Earth as part of the 2nd Airborne Squadron, and as far as I can tell, she was her squadron's Eve equivalent. Raven seemingly followed a similar path that we do as Eve in the game, as we encounter multiple legacies left by her along our journey in the same order that she left them. And legacies are essentially recorded journal logs left as messages for those who come after. 8 days after being deployed, Raven made it to Altesse Lavoir, but most of her squadron had been wiped out. Only she and 2 others, Ripley and Anis, were still alive, although Anis was in critical condition. She searched through the databases here, coming across some information on the Final War, the name given to the war between humans and the Androidos. The information had been tainted by Mothersphere, however, as it claimed that humans were victorious in the war and escaped to the colony. With this new knowledge, Raven vowed to investigate the origins of the Naytibas. 44 days later, she leaves another legacy inside Matrix 11. Since her last legacy, both Anis and Ripley had died, leaving Raven as the sole survivor of her squadron, and she had uncovered new information about Mothersphere. She discovered Mothersphere's true identity as an AI rather than a god, and most of the truth behind humans and Androidos, but was still missing the critical piece of the puzzle. Over the next almost 4 weeks, she'd learned the truth behind Androidos, about how they'd replaced humans and assumed their role, and how the Naytibas arose as the last resort of the final humans' efforts to fight against the Androidos. She'd leave behind one final legacy 21 days later, 109 days after her initial dive. Raven had uncovered the full truth, or at least the full truth as far as we know. She now knew that Mother Sphere had incited the war between humans and the Andro-Ados, and that she was responsible for Earth becoming the wasteland that it was by dropping the colony's orbit ring. I don't know the exact timeline, but at some point along her journey, presumably after learning the full truth, Raven met Raphael Marx, now going by Adam. The two of them formed an alliance in their battle against Mother Sphere, whom Adam no longer aligned with. Raven grew incredibly attached to Adam, and talks about him as if she had become infatuated with him. But Adam would eventually learn of the 7th Airborne Squadron and our protagonist Eve, and realize that she was who he needed to achieve his plans. Raven was devastated upon learning this, and this was where her switch from hero to villain happens. She had been lied to and betrayed by Mother Sphere, and now abandoned and betrayed by Adam, and is driven completely mad. She surrenders her quote-unquote humanity and transforms into a Naytiba. In the game's prologue, Raven attacks what's left of the 7th Airborne Squadron, which is just Eve and Taki at this point. She swoops in right after the two of them defeat a large Naytiba, and despite Taki trying to taunt her and keep her away from Eve, Raven sees her replacement lying on the ground, defenseless and vulnerable, and charges at Eve. Taki jumps in the way and takes Raven's attack, giving herself up to save Eve, just before Adam rushes in on his bike to rescue Eve out of harm's way. Raven didn't completely kill Taki, as we find her again in Matrix 11, but she probably was the one who transformed Taki into a Naytiba and plopped her in our path. Raven is largely absent from the majority of Stellar Blade. The majority of our experiences with her are via the legacies that she left behind, and including the prologue, Raven only physically appears 3 times. The next time she acts is when Eve goes into space to track down her final Alpha Core, and Adam is off doing secret Adam things. With Zion now unguarded, Raven takes advantage of the opportunity and launches an attack on the city. Eve returns from space and arrives in Zion just in time to save most of the people living there, or at least most of the people that we've met, and finds Raven in Oracle's chamber slaughtering his bodyguard, Man. She still doesn't know who this mysterious Naytiba is, but she recognizes it as the same one that killed Taki. Raven throws out a confusing accusation, shifting the blame of her own actions onto Eve. She laments about him, and how he chose Eve over her, despite having already proven so much. And Eve, understandably, has no idea what the fuck she's waffling on about, and then they fight. My notes here simply say, fuck this fight, as I'm pretty sure I died to unidentified Naytiba more times than all the other bosses in the game combined. On what is certainly Eve's first try, she manages to overpower Raven in her Naytiba form, which then spits out a naked Raven who teleports away almost immediately.
Seems as though I've been exposed. Damn it!
Eve wasn't able to get the final Alpha Core she needed from space, but conveniently Raven had fatally injured Oracle, who turns out to be the original Alpha Naytiba, and he gives us his core, allowing Eve to create the Master Core and access the nest where she could find the Elder Naytiba. But waiting just outside the nest for her is Raven once again. She's still pissed off at Eve for simply existing, and once again berates her for daring to be her replacement.
I should congratulate you for realizing the truth and making it this far. Of course, you won't be able to see him.
But Eve is also pissed off at Raven for taking Taki from her, and so they fight again. In what was definitely an easier fight than the last one, Eve once again comes out on top and subdues Raven. Rather than killing her though, she merely dismembers her and leaves to search for Adam.
You've taken so much from me. In exchange, I'll allow you to witness the end. In that state.
What? What do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are? You don't know anything. Kill me. Go ahead and kill me. I wouldn't be your first.
Lily, let's go.
Eve! Stop right there! Finish this! Eve! Eve!
And that's the last of Raven. We don't get a full conclusion to her story. The last we see of her is her lying in the desert, incapacitated, pathetically screaming for Eve to come kill her. Ravens are found in many mythologies all across the world. Ancient Rome, indigenous peoples, Germanic tales, biblical passages, Islam, etc. For this character, the obvious place to check for inspiration was the Bible, as 2 of the 3 main characters are literally named Adam and Eve, and you can't really get much more on the nose than that. But before I looked into what I thought was the most likely source of symbolism, I figured I'd look at some other depictions quickly to see if there were any other similarities, intentional or not. There were 2 main comparisons that I could find. First is the raven's general association with death, probably most popularly recognized in Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Raven. The narrator of the poem laments the loss of his lover Lenore, and is visited by a raven who can only repeat one word, nevermore. In the real world, many ravens feast on carrion or carcasses. This leads to them often being seen around dead animals, giving them a heavy association with death. And in Stellar Blade, Raven obviously leaves plenty of death in her wake. Secondly is the raven's role as a messenger in several mythologies. Norse and Germanic tales claim that Odin had 2 pet ravens, Hugin and Munin, that he used as his eyes and ears. Every day he'd send them out from... I'm not fucking pronouncing that.
Litskjalf.
Yeah, that place. And they would fly all around Midgard and return to tell him what they had observed. The Greek and Roman tale of Apollo has him send out a white raven to spy on his lover Coronis, whom he suspected of being unfaithful. The raven would return to Apollo and tell him that Coronis was having an affair, and in his fury, Apollo supposedly burnt the raven, turning it and all future ravens' feathers black, creating the bird as we know it today. Stellar Blade's raven also fills the role of messenger in a way. She was sent down to Earth by Mother Sphere, not as a messenger originally, but ends up serving the role as she uncovers Mother Sphere's web of lies. Almost all of the major backstory in the game is delivered to us by the legacies left by Raven, fitting the raven's mythical position as a messenger. Now, as I mentioned, the game has some obvious references to Christian mythology, as 2 of the 3 main characters are named Adam and Eve, so the Bible was a logical place to check for any symbolism relevant to other characters as well. And the relevant story for Raven, I believe, is Noah's Ark from the Book of Genesis. As I'm sure we're all aware, Noah received a message from God that the world would be flooded, and so he took 2 of every animal, 1 male and 1 female, and brought them onto a gigantic wooden ship that would sail until the floods receded from the planet, at which point they could begin to inhabit the Earth again. When the water receded enough for the tops of the mountains to be visible, Noah waited for 40 days and then sent out a raven from the ark to search for habitable land. The raven flew back and forth from the ark until the water had dried up from the earth, at which point most interpretations I've read assume that the raven found a new home and ceased returning to the ark. Noah then sent out a dove who, being unable to survive on a diet of carrion like the raven, would require life to properly return to Earth in order to survive. The first time the dove was sent out, it returned shortly after, empty-handed. Noah waited a week and then sent out the dove again, and it returned with an olive branch, evidence that the Earth had begun to repair itself after the flood. I think that Raven and Eve could fill the roles of the raven and dove respectively. Raven is, I assume, the first Androidos working with Adam to fight against Mother Sphere, much like the raven was the first bird sent out by Noah. But just as Noah needed another bird after the raven in order to check the status of the Earth, Raven wasn't sufficient for Adam's end goal and was merely a stepping stone until he could unite with Eve. One key difference, though, is that unlike Noah's raven, Adam's raven wanted to return. The bird presumably found a new place to live in the desolate world with piles of carcasses for it to feast on for life. But in Stellar Blade, Raven wanted nothing more than to remain with Adam. Basically, all of her dialogue outside of Legacies is anger about Adam betraying her or bitterness towards Eve for simply existing.
In spite of everything, I do wonder why he chose you instead of me. I've already proven this much, but why?
I knew from the very beginning that all along I was nothing but a tool to guide you to him. I served him for a very long time. I know him better than anyone. You don't know anything. You don't know his pain, his anger, his agony. All this talk of you being the chosen one, it ends here.
And when Eve leaves her disabled rather than simply killing her, Raven pleads for Eve to end her. Raven cared about Adam immensely, and to me her dialogue before the second fight suggests that she even loved him romantically. But the tales don't tell us of Adam and Raven, they tell us of Adam and Eve, so she was doomed to be cast aside for Adam's true partner. And Raven couldn't handle the jealousy from seeing Adam strive for his goals with someone else. So she was primed and ready when the 7th Airborne Squadron landed, eager to kill her replacement. We don't get much information on the other squadrons, but it seems plausible to me that she did similar things upon their arrival. When Adam and Eve are both MIA, she invades Zion, trying to ruin everything they had worked to achieve so far. And when Eve chases down Adam's bike signal, Raven is lying in wait for her again, to stop her from reuniting with the man that Raven viewed as hers. Adam's betrayal was the second one she'd experienced since her dive down to Earth. The character bank tells us that learning about Mother Sphere's lies had overwhelmed her with madness and confusion, leaving her in a vulnerable state for when Adam finds her. But despite being temporarily given a new purpose by Adam, it wasn't meant to last as she's tossed aside in favor of a newer model. And this is all part of why I think she's such a compelling character. I'd personally find it hard to justify saying she isn't evil or isn't a villain, but at the same time I can't entirely blame her either. She was sent out on a mission by her creator, by her god, to reclaim the Earth for humanity, but that humanity was a lie. Her humanity came at the cost of so many others, and learning that the one being that was supposed to be her rock, her one unfailing source of solace in this ever-abandoned world was manipulating her like that, broke her. And presumably this is when she met Adam. He was there to pick her up and give her a new purpose, but what hurts more than having your heart broken the first time? Having someone take advantage of your vulnerable state and break it again. And being abandoned twice in such a short time span was too much for her to handle. And so she took it out on Eve, on Taki, on Zion.
Do not forget, we were just pawns on a twisted chessboard.
And the only question I really have left is, why Eve? What was Adam unable to achieve with Raven that he needed Eve for? The game is a little light on details on everything, so a quick reminder that this whole section is going to be purely speculation. I have two main ideas that come to mind. The first and more obvious one is that Raven shows a clear destructive tendency. We see her attack the defenseless Eve in the prologue. She raises an entire city in anger when Eve and Adam are gone, and she actively tries to stop Eve at the end of her journey, even after Eve is proven capable of stopping Mother Sphere. And my second idea is a bit of an extension of the first, in that Raven seems much more concerned with Adam's approval than she does with the actual goal of taking down Mother Sphere. All of her bitterness and anger that she shows is directed at Eve. She had long forgotten the plot of taking down Mother Sphere and didn't care that she was stopping that from happening, only that Adam was trying to do it without her. Reasonably, he would probably want someone more level-headed as his partner in his plan to take down God. Raven seems quick-tempered and prone to emotional outbursts as opposed to Eve's generally much more calculated approach. Now, she is considerably more put together in the legacies that she leaves behind, but when you have the ability to prepare for a recording, you can present a much more different side of yourself. Take my channel, for example. I'm a lot more reserved, quiet, and overall less confident in my live streams, but in my videos, when I've had the time to make sure I know what I'm talking about and choose my words carefully, it's a lot easier to choose what parts of me that all of you see. For both of these ideas, I can only point to her current behavior as evidence, as it's just impossible to know for sure without the game giving us more insight into Adam and Raven's minds. Perhaps Raven always had these traits and subtly showcased them in her tone, demeanor, or word choices, and Adam was able to pick up on them, realizing that he needed someone he could see as more reliable. Or maybe Adam somehow prophesized Eve's coming, and everything I just said has nothing to do with anything. Who really knows?